All right, let's dive right in. For the very first time, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, is deciding whether to approve a psychedelic drug, MDMA, as a prescription treatment. And its target is one of the toughest conditions to treat, post traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Now, this is a huge deal. A decision like this could literally open up a whole new way of thinking about mental health care. But it's also forcing regulators to ask some really tough questions about how we test and approve new medicines in the first place. And this quote, right here, straight from the FDA's own review, just says it all. I mean, look at that first part. Rapid, clinically meaningful, durable improvement. In the world of drug development, those are the magic words. That's the goal. But then you get that big however. The data is challenging to interpret. And that tension between incredible promise on one hand and major scientific questions on the other, well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. So, to really understand why this is such a high stakes decision, you first have to get a sense of the problem MDMA assisted therapy is trying to solve. And that's the huge, and I mean huge, treatment gap for PTSD. The scale of this is just staggering. We're talking about an estimated 13 million Americans who were living with PTSD back in 2020. And this isn't just a statistic on a page. We're talking about a truly disabling condition with intrusive memories, a constant feeling of being on high alert, and it carries a tragically high risk for suicide. The need for better options is urgent. This slide really lays out why there's so much excitement. On the left, you've got the current standard of care, mostly SSRIs, common antidepressants. You have to take them every single day. It can take up to 3 months to feel the full effect. And even then, fewer than 30% of patients actually get full remission. That leaves a lot of people suffering. Then on the right, you have this totally different model with MDMA. It's not a daily pill. It's a short-term treatment, just 3 sessions. And it's designed to work fast, with the whole point being to make talk therapy more powerful and effective. Okay, so with that urgent need in mind, let's look at the evidence that got MDMA to the FDA's doorstep in the first place. This is the case for approval, and it's built on 2 big, important clinical trials. And here it is. This is the chart that has everyone talking. It tracks PTSD symptoms over 18 weeks. Now see that top line? That's the group that got therapy with a placebo, basically a sugar pill. The bottom line, that's the group that got MDMA with their therapy. And remember, on this scale, lower is better. That drop in the MDMA group isn't just a little dip, it is absolutely dramatic. Let's put a number on that because it's a big one. In the first major trial, the MDMA group dropped almost 12 points more on the PTSD scale than the placebo group. Now, the key here is that the FDA agrees this isn't just statistically significant, meaning it's not a random fluke. They also said it's clinically meaningful. That's regulator speak for an improvement that actually makes a real, tangible difference in a person's life. And get this, the good news kept coming. These improvements, they weren't just some temporary fix. The data showed that the positive effects were durable. They lasted for months after that last session with no more MDMA. And that points to the potential for real, lasting change, which is pretty much the holy grail in psychiatry. So with a huge need and these incredible lasting results, this seems like a total slam dunk, right? Well, not so fast. This is where we come back to the FDA's key phrase, challenging to interpret. Let's break down exactly what gave the regulators pause. The single biggest problem really boils down to a super simple question. In a double-blind study, where neither the patient nor the doctor is supposed to know who got the real drug, was the blind actually, blind? Could people tell what they were given? And that brings us to this critical idea called functional unblinding. Just think about it for a second. If you get a pill that gives you a profound, multi-hour psychedelic experience, and someone else gets a sugar pill that does nothing, you're gonna know which group you're in. It's like doing a blind taste test between a shot of espresso and a glass of water. It's not really blind at all. And this isn't just an MDMA problem. It is the fundamental challenge for pretty much all psychedelic research. And we don't even have to guess if this happened. The trial's own data confirms it. I mean, just look at these numbers. In the MDMA group, almost 87% of people correctly guessed they got MDMA. And in the placebo group, 75% correctly guessed they got the placebo. The takeaway here is crystal clear. The blind was, for all practical purposes, completely broken. So why does that matter so much? Because it creates something called expectation bias. The FDA points this out themselves. If you know you're getting this groundbreaking new psychedelic that you've heard amazing things about, your own hope and expectation can have a powerful therapeutic effect, all by themselves. And that's the core of the problem. It becomes almost impossible to separate the chemical effect of the drug from the powerful psychological effect of just believing it's going to work. And the unblinding issue? That was just the start. FDA reviewers flagged several other really big questions. For instance, since everyone got a ton of therapy, how do we know it wasn't just the therapy doing the work? They also saw big spikes in blood pressure and heart rate, but felt the overall heart safety wasn't fully understood. Critically, things like basic liver function tests, they weren't collected in the main trials, which leaves a big gap in the safety data. And finally, the trials didn't really track positive feelings like euphoria, which makes it hard to get a full picture of the drug's abuse potential. So you take all of this, the incredible promise and these very serious data concerns, and it all boils down to one final, incredibly difficult question for the FDA's advisory committee, the classic benefit versus risk calculation. So the FDA basically laid out 4 make-or-break questions for the panel to vote on. First, given that the blind was broken, can we really be sure this drug is effective? Second, is the safety data we have good enough, even with the gaps? Third, can we safely manage the risk of patients being impaired for hours? And finally, the big one, when you weigh it all, do the potential benefits for people with severe PTSD outweigh all of these documented risks and uncertainties? You know, there's just no easy answer here. The potential benefits are undeniable. This offers profound hope where for many there is none. But the risks and the scientific questions are just as real and just as significant. It forces this really tough choice between the urgent needs of patients right now and the rigorous standards we expect for our medicines. So I'll leave the final question with you. If you were on that panel, weighing all of this, what would you decide?